Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Jim Kleiber Show. I am Jim Kleiber. It is Wednesday, November 11th, 2020. The sun is shining, but it is much colder. I think it dropped 20 degrees Fahrenheit today from yesterday. So, today is a federal holiday in the United States. It is now known as Veterans Day. I believe at one point it was known as Armistice Day. And I was just reading about the origin of it, and apparently Veterans Day in the U.S. came about as a result of the formal end of World War I. Maybe in Europe and some other places they call it by a different name, but here in the U.S. we call it World War I. And it was the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918. Oops, 1918, 1917. I think 1918. Let me get my facts straight. Of 1918, yes, to be correct. So 11th hour, 11th day of 11th month of 1918, when the war formally ended. And we have been celebrating that holiday in the U.S. ever since. The day has changed a little bit. I think at some point it went to some day in October, but now has reverted back to the 11th of November. And I wanted to look it up because somebody was talking about how President Trump didn't show up to a ceremony today and said that the specific time mattered. You know, he was late. And I was confused why that specific time mattered, but now it makes more sense that it was the 11th hour. And I think that holds a lot of significance for people. So what is Veterans Day? What do we celebrate on Veterans Day? And why celebrate veterans? I was lucky a few years ago to get involved with an organization called Save a Warrior. And, you know, I just stumbled on it. I was down in San Diego, and I was looking for something to do in the afternoon while the girl I was dating was going to school. And so I was just browsing. You know, I just went to this veterans conference and was curious to learn more about the space, and stumbled on a booth where this guy was talking to me about Save a Warrior. And he says, "Man, you don't understand. This program saved my life. It's a fantastic organization with people who have very big, caring hearts." And I said, okay. He says, no, but you need to meet the founder. I said, what? He said, yeah, come. So he ushered me all the way across the room. In this room, this is a very large room. It was a big auditorium, big convention center. And introduced me to the founder, Jake Clark, and I was just overtaken by the organization in general, but what Jake was standing for, what Jake was trying to represent in the world. And it just, I think so many of us don't understand the pain of what it's like to go through and being a veteran. To have gone through war, to have gone through military training, to have gone through the military experience. At least here in the U.S., we may have gone through it ourselves. We may have friends or family who have, but we may not, or we may not be very close with those people, as the military has become more of a voluntary thing these days. Voluntary, right? So some people, you know, it's not forced. Like it was before with the draft, or mandatory as it is in some countries these days. So I think a lot of us don't relate so strongly to the military experience. And I think taking out the war, taking out maybe the combat and things that they've seen overseas, I know just as a human being who has lived outside of my country and come back, it can be a very alienating and lonely experience. And so I was really excited to meet this group, Save a Warrior, and try to learn more about helping these people reintegrate into society. And why I went down this tangent is because I remember, you know, one thing they talked about was how veterans in the past, especially World War I, World War II, when they came back to the U.S., they were greeted with cheers and with parades. And then that started to change maybe around the Korean War, but definitely at the Vietnam War, where people would come home and they were greeted with boos and with scorn, almost looked down upon or ignored, called things like baby killers or some other type of, derogatory term. And I mean, it's already a hard enough experience just coming back from living in a different country, but living in a different country in a military culture, plus if they saw combat or went through some of that experience, I can't even imagine the layers of cultural reintegration that they have to go through. And so what I really liked about the Save a Warrior program, and it's still going on, is that it helps people break down to a deeper emotional level, process things on a much deeper root emotional level, and help people process some of the stuff that they've been going through years and years and years. Not just with the military experience, but with experiences before the military or outside of the military or tangential to the military. Save a Warrior also works with first responders, so firefighters, police officers, but also some people who are, EMTs, and it also has, I think they still do this where they have one witness per program. So each cohort's about maybe 10 to 15 people, I think, and typically have one witness who is not a first responder, or not necessarily a first responder. So, for example, I was a witness on one of the programs. I know some movie directors have been witnesses on the programs. I think some people who have been sponsors have been witnesses. And the thing they say about the witness is that you're not just witnessing. You're you're right in the thick of things. You go into it thinking, oh, okay, I'm just going to be sitting on the sidelines watching. But no, you're involved in the emotional mix just like everyone else. And honestly, it was, at the time when I did it, it was 5.5 days. I think it's now 4 days, but it was one of the most transformational experiences in my life. Just the camaraderie and the sense of love and support that was in the organization is something that I've rarely found elsewhere. And also, I mean, that underpinning a lot of the theory and practice that it goes through and the exercises that it teaches. And I wanted to highlight this organization just a little bit because I think it's easy to outsource our conflict resolution to other people and then forget how much burden we've placed on these people. I mean, if you look at a war is really two groups of people not being able to resolve conflict. For me, a war is a failure. It's a failure for two sides to be able to reconcile with themselves and come back together. It's an escalation of conflict until there are almost no other alternatives, or people don't see other alternatives. And then we outsource this to other people. It's kind of like escalating it through the court of law. It's taking a case to a judge. For example, maybe me and my neighbor don't agree on raking of leaves or something ridiculous, but then we get into a big fight about it, but we can't resolve it ourselves. And so we take it to, either we call the cops to come in and try to resolve the conflict for us, or we escalate it to the courts, and then it goes through the court system. And if we know how to resolve the conflict, we don't have to put this burden on the courts. We don't have to put this burden on the police officers to show up and try to resolve the conflict. We don't have to put the burden on our military members. We don't have to have nearly as much military. If we know how to resolve conflict ourselves, if we can come back together with the people across the aisle or across the street or across the river. So I just, on this day, I pause and I think a little more about how we've offloaded a lot of our conflict to the people in the military. And I think many of them feel proud and feel grateful to be able to help people who can't resolve conflict. And I think sometimes they get overwhelmed because they don't just take on our conflict on top of all the conflict they have in their lives. And this doesn't just apply to military, it applies again to people in law enforcement and people in, heck, it applies to teachers. It applies to a lot of people in life, that when we can't resolve conflict, we just dump it on them and we overwhelm them with our troubles. And I think it's just extreme sometimes when it comes to military and to veterans. Because by the time the conflict is escalated to that point, it's a conflict of life and death. Some of these people have seen things that we hope we never even dream about. We hope we don't even see these things in our nightmares. And some of these people have seen them in person and have had to live with their actions or their inactions and the pain of it. At one point, I really wanted to focus on working with military members, and more specifically veterans. But then I thought to myself, if I just keep helping the veterans and politicians keep getting into wars with each other and sending more military in, it doesn't seem like it's ever going to resolve the problem. And I'm not saying that I don't think that veterans are worthy of this type of help. I do. I strongly do. I guess I just wonder, is it the veterans that are struggling, or are we the ones that are struggling and just project it all on them? It's almost like that idea of like you got dirt somewhere and you just kind of brush it, sweep it under the rug. But the military veterans sometimes are the ones that are the rugs that are holding all that dirt in for society. Not that they're dirty people. That's what I'm not trying to say. I'm trying to say that they accumulate so much of our trauma and so much of our pain and so much of our fear and so much of our anger. We can just kind of stuff into this one part of society, into this one group of people, and then blame them or ignore them, which can be worse. I don't know. Do you know anyone who's a veteran? Doesn't have to be from the U.S. military. It can be from the Kosovarian military. It can be from the Singaporean military. It can be from the Ugandan or Ethiopian military. Do you know anyone who's currently serving in the military? Are you currently serving in the military? It breaks my heart to think that we can't resolve conflict and then we dump it off on a lot of these, especially younger people. Like I have friends right now who live in Ethiopia, and they're really, really worried. Some of them have friends and family that live in the northern part of Ethiopia, Tigray. I think that's how you pronounce it, Tigray province or area, and are worried that a civil war might break out, and are worried that lots of people are going to die from bloodshed. And for me, it angers me so much that people can't resolve conflict, can't apologize, and move on. That we have this drive to commit vengeance. Somebody hurts us, we want to hurt them back. We want to hurt them back as much, if not twice as much. but we don't have the courage to actually do it ourselves, and so we get other people to do it for us. And we hurt these people in the process. It just, for me, it seems so cowardly. I actually think vengeance is quite cowardly as well. I think the really strong person apologizes and forgives and seeks to mend the relationship instead of escalate it and sully it and make it worse. And I don't know, it really angers me why we have so much war in this world. And arguably war has gone down over time, but it's come out in different ways. We still have so much conflict and so much division and so much distance, emotional distance from each other. And it really frustrates me when we try to bring in other people to resolve it for us, and we get them all mixed up in a mess. We try to rally people to join our side to hate on someone. We try to rally people to join our side to ignore people. You know, I talk about it in the veteran context, but this happens. I mean, I believe so many of them get riddled with a lot of the conflict that we have, not just societally, but even personally. Like I said, from what I learned in this program, Save a Warrior, many of the veterans that are really struggling with suicide or with addiction often have trauma that comes before they join the military. And I think we can easily blame these people. Oh, there's something wrong with them. It's, you know, it's the one person who's acting up in class. Oh, there's something wrong with the kid. And not realize how we are contributing to that person's pain and that person's trauma. I think it's very easy for most of us, myself included, to overlook how I am causing pain to someone else. Because often that person doesn't tell me how I'm causing them pain. They don't open up and say, listen, what you just said right there really hurt me, or how you did this really made me feel hopeless. We don't say this very often to each other. And I just think about how many people, specifically in the military, have just been like a sponge for all the unresolved trauma that other people in this world have, that their parents have, that their relatives have, that their teachers have, that their neighbors have, that their romantic partners have. Just soak it up. And then we look at them and we blame them or we ignore them, almost completely unaware of how we have contributed to what they're feeling and their actions. There's a movie, Silver Linings Playbook, with Bradley Cooper, and I think it really talks about a lot of this stuff. I don't want to go too deep into it. And check it out, though. If you're really interested in this concept, I really recommend that movie. Yeah, it's a combination. I feel grateful for what they've done, and I feel angry at almost the people who have put them in these situations where they have to choose, do I shoot this person or not? You know, to be put in a situation where they have to make a life or death decision to protect their own life. They're in such a dangerous situation where they think they might get killed, and then they may have to kill other people for those in combat. But even those who aren't directly in combat, you know, I talked to a good friend of mine, you know, somebody I've known since I was probably 4 years old. I went to preschool with this guy. He joined the Navy, and a couple of years ago I talked about doing some work with emotional self-defense to help military vets, but especially the kind of the special operations guys, Navy SEALs and things like this. And I asked him, I said, why do you think I should do, like, why do you think I have this drive to help? He says, because they need it. He says, man, he says, I work on a ship and I help with the targeting system of the airplanes. And I know that every time I do my job and I make that targeting system correct, someone is likely to die as a result. If I screw up, then somebody may not die, or another person may die. It's just, it really impacts him. And so even indirectly, people who are in the military may have this feeling, you know? I don't know. I think it just breaks my heart. I think there's just a deep sadness when I think about how much we can project on these people and then blame them. It's like it's almost like having a can of paint. We're holding a can of paint and then we throw the paint on somebody else, and like maybe it's red paint, and then we're like, why are you so red? It's like, I'm red because you threw this red paint on me. Don't you see? Oh, no. Why are you so red? It's like, you threw this paint on me. I didn't ask to be covered in red paint. You just dumped this can of paint on me. Don't you see that you contribute part, if not most of this problem? Huh. But I have hope. I have hope. Programs like Save a Warrior out there are helping people dig deeper, helping veterans, first responders dig deeper and start to process some of the conflict that they've accumulated from their lives, not just their own personal lives, but again, the stuff that we have donated to them. And I have hope that programs like this and that new tools and technologies and communities are developing to help us resolve some of this conflict. At the end of the day, if we keep responding with tit for tat, which means if somebody punches me, I punch back. If somebody hurts me, I hurt them back. It's a cycle of vengeance. One person said, tit for tat without forgiveness leads to a death spiral. At some point, one of us has to forgive. At some point, one of us has to apologize. At some point, one of us has to step up to try to resolve the conflict. And I think it's easy for us to sit back and go, oh, the other person never does this. But even today, somebody sent me a message just saying that they missed me. And I was terrified to look at the message because I thought that they were going to blame me and yell at me for something I haven't done for the last couple months. I felt really terrified and ashamed to look at the message. And then I saw the message that they were reaching out with love, and it just felt like sad, like joy and sadness at the same time, bittersweet. This idea that I don't always have to be the one to step up. Some people are stepping up as well to resolve the conflict. And I think it's easy for me to not see it when they do. And always think that I'm the one who's apologizing or forgiving first, but it's not true. It's not true at all. And I think if we just recognized and gave more attention to when people are trying to repair relationships, when we make efforts and others make effort to repair relationships, that we are almost all trying much better than it looks like, trying much more than it looks like we are. And at the same time, why not step up and and be the leader? Why not lead us back to healthier relationships? So on a day like today, where it's Veterans Day, and again, if you are or were in the service, then maybe these conversations will be easier for you. But if you're not, it could be hard to have some of these conversations with people who were in the military. The civilian military divide in the U.S. is pretty strong. At the same time, we can step up and try to repair the relationship. We can tell them how we've been feeling and how much we miss them, or how we're feeling in different parts of our lives, and we can ask them how they're feeling. Instead of just giving them the thank you for your service and almost treating them like a god, or looking down on them as if they aren't really a human being. We can just see them as another human being that's struggling through life, that is trying to dance their way through different cultures and is trying to process a lot of internal conflict that they've been carrying for a while, related to different things. We all have our own internal conflicts. We all have different external conflicts, but in a way, a lot of them are similar. A lot of the core concepts of them are similar, and more than anything, a lot of the feelings are similar. So what I hope to do today is to reach out to a few friends who are military veterans, and just show them how much I care about them as humans, not as military veterans. You know, I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if some people will be offended by that, but for me, I think sometimes we can get caught up in these labels and these identities that make us think we're so much different from each other, and forget that we all share this common identity of being human being. And I think sometimes it's nice to just be treated like a human being. So I hope to do that today, reach out to a few friends, and I hope you as well may find some inspiration in this. Feel inspired to reach out, or to think about them, or to read a book, or to watch a movie, or something, just to consider this group of human beings, and not as someone who's so different or so separate from us, but as someone who has, felt a lot of the same things that we have felt. Even if we can't relate to what their maybe combat experience was like, perhaps we can relate to other aspects of their lives. And I think, speaking as someone who has spent a lot of time outside of my home culture, coming home, sometimes it feels really nice just for someone to connect with me on the things they can connect with me on the feelings they have. They may not understand what life is like in Tanzania, but they understand what anger and fear and confusion and worry about one's health, or excitement about one's project, or pride in seeing a company or organization grow. They can understand those feelings. So I think today is a wonderful day for us to try to reconnect and feel a little more connected to some of the people in our lives who joined the military and are still in, or who have retired from the military. And those who have died as well from the military, just trying to feel a closer connection, a tighter bond with these humans in our lives. So I wish you a full and I don't like saying happy for holidays, because I think it just focuses on one emotion. I wish you kind of a full range of emotion on this Veterans Day, that you feel the full spectrum of humanity, and that you feel really connected to the people in your life. All right, y'all. I hope this made some sense. Sometimes I speak to the ether, I speak to the computer, and I don't know how much resonates with people. So if you appreciated the episode, if you didn't, if it made you angry, or confused, or frustrated, or excited, or proud, or relaxed, or calm, or grateful, or hopeful, or hopeless, or or strong and powerful? Let me know. I would love to hear. Put it in the comments or send me a private note, and I'd love to hear how it went for you. All right. Take care, y'all.